Good evening, and how are you? The name is David Mills, and I want to thank the Queens Historical Society for affording me this opportunity, as well as poets and writers. It's truly a delight to see this space. It's in August and feels lived in, shall we say. So I received a few grants from the Queens Council on the Arts, and it's actually led to one published collection and then a series of poems about Harry Stewart. He grew up in Harry Stewart Jr. He grew up near LaGuardia Airport. I believe the neighborhood would have been considered East Elmhurst at the time. And he was one of the Tuskegee Airmen, and the Tuskegee Airmen were the first, at the time, my folks were called Negroes, to be military aviators. And they were called the Tuskegee Airmen because they trained in Tuskegee, Alabama at the Tuskegee Institute, which is a historically Black college started by Booker T. Washington. And even prior to the Airmen, there were maybe a handful of African Americans who were pilots. So I have this whole series of poems about Harry Stewart Jr. This first one is called And Or. Harry got accepted out of high school, and he actually got rejected a number of times before he got accepted. And he specifically wanted to be a pilot. He was like so into flying even from a little kid. And he ended up also getting, or simultaneously, after a few rejections from what wasn't technically the Air Force, but would become that, he got an acceptance from the Army. And he's like, I don't want to do this. And he got, acceptance draft notices from both, if you would. So this is called And Or. And the military base he was going to be sent to, Army, was in the South, and he grew up in Queens. And Or. Harry Stewart receiving 2 letters to report to 2 different branches of the military. How many people get to cradle fate in both hands? How many people at age 18? Camp Upton, Keesler Field. Report or report. Official notice or telegram. Orders or orders. Long Island or Mississippi. East Coast or the Deep South. Close to home or close to hell. So when he was actually training, he's in Alabama, as I mentioned, and he would have this feeling that the earth was kind of moving backwards as he was flying. So this is sort of touching on that. He's in Tuskegee at this point. It's called High Cotton. On high, Harry acclimated his flaccid ascot to the direction of the heavens, to the earth's withering dimensions. On high, slow as a collie's rough-coated tail waxing a dusty road, either Harry's craft or the land seemed to worm backwards. Sweltering Alabama afternoons when Diddley's to-do list was the one thing on that mutt's agenda, Harry cottoned to that pooch's take on things, because for Harry, joy and flying were like sitting on top of the world twice. Camaraderie. So this is just sort of talking about like when they're doing their training. Camaraderie. Salute, march, reveille, eyebrow invites fingertips. Salute, sir, yes, taps, fingertips interrupt eyebrow. This was something big, the heavens a country, and somehow, Mr. Stewart, you were serving it. Dry light. So they were trained by white officers. All their commanders were white and mostly Southern, and they basically did not think these African-American men had the aptitude intellectually or the capability to learn how to fly. So this is sort of touching on that. And as I said, they were studying at Tuskegee Institute, and Booker T. Washington had started it, and he was sort of a leading light for African Americans in the latter half of the 19th century. This is called Dry Light. When uniforms outfit a university, trainees home in on close to adult ABCs. Focus on reshaping the makings of Booker T. During class, cadets' eyes spill dry light on the pages, suck up much more than the nothing they pour out. eyes at cruising altitude over a paragraph. This learning was a higher type. Yet black bumpkins don't have brains, just dark corridors from brow to nape and ear to ear. Dogma, debunk, debunk, dogma. A black lab should sit on its hindquarters. Sit, boy, because the notion of conjuring a black squadron is blunt force trauma to the South's noggin, is internal bleeding in the country's farther reaches. Yet here, at the house that Booker built, a chocolate operation blossomed. Here, in the house that Booker built, who could have imagined the first syllable of his first name, book, the thing he hoped his students would spend half their outsized hours buried in, would one day include pupils who wanted to nick the unmeasured edges of the sky. Harry had enlisted in Washington's initial syllable because he'd come here to dream and debunk. He'd come here to unleash and collar the dogma, to teach its commands. Here, white boy, here, sit, kneel, be fair, be just, for once, just once. Booker T's last name was Washington. So there was, and with that poem, the cadets weren't isolated. They were going to school with the college students. That's also kind of playing in there. That was kind of odd, both for them and the regular college students, to see these guys sitting in uniform, and they had to kind of walk around really stiff. This is called Green. And this is about them being hazed because there were different classes. There were probably about 40 classes of Tuskegee Airmen over the time they were being trained. And for those who might not know, the Airmen were part of World War II. And they were noted. I mentioned this gentleman, Mr. Archer. He got ace status. He shot down 5 German planes, and they had the lowest ratio of planes that were taken down because, for the most part, they served as escort bombers during World War II, and they had the lowest ratio, and they were called the Red Tails, and they painted this color on the tails of their planes. And there was a lot of bigotry, as I was mentioning, with the officers not believing these Negroes had the intellectual aptitude, and then the white pilots that they were kind of protecting in formation were like, oh, we don't want these guys. And then as the war progressed, they were constantly asking for them because of this low ratio of bombers being taken down. So this is about them, Harry's class being hazed, if you would, by an upper class group of Tuskegee Airmen, and a deuce and a half was a type of truck, military truck. Green. As he and his fellow rookies sprang from the back of a deuce and a half, before Harry stood greetings and seniors, christening the newbies dummies. But to be here, these rookies couldn't have been. Yet as if they could bask in inspecting their kneecaps, scold their latrines' chipped mirrors, or interrogate their own ankles, they were told to watch themselves by upperclassmen who wanted to pluck cocky from their green confidence, wanted to leave cocky and confident ill at ease, reduce both words to cockeyed clouds in each cadet's mouth. Verbal fraternal twins whose father betrayed them, giving them names that got them teased in the 5th grade lunch line, names they would never easily sport, like, for all your natural born days, putting on nothing but shit slick polka dot skivvies, names that made the alphabet ashamed of itself. And again, this is sort of dealing with the pledging and dealing with the Greek alphabet. So it's called Alpha, Beta, Alphabet. And so they were pledged, but it wasn't like the way we think of normal fraternities, of which I am a member of one. Alpha, Beta, Alphabet. Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon, Zeta, Eta, Theta, Iota, Kappa, Lambda, Mu, Nu, Xi, Omicron, Pi, Rho, Sigma, Tau, Upsilon, Pi, Chi, Psi, Omega. Greek, a low-flying language. cloud with no home training and down south's mouth. But the Alabama atmosphere made legroom for this language, legroom for a paddle's hot diggity on a newbie's hamstring. This is close to a frat house as Harry would ever get, inducted by what would have been upperclassmen, upper because they were more familiar with the air. This next piece is called Artificial Horizon. So part of their training before they actually got to fly, and then even after they were flying, was they would train in what was called a link trainer. It's a flight simulator. So it's on the ground, and as I said, the officers were all white, or the senior officers. And so they were trained by a white officer in the flight simulator, and it's kind of like a box they were sitting in, and the white officer would be sitting outside and giving directions, and you're in there, like when you go to like an amusement park and they kind of have this fake thing, but this is, deadly serious. And he had, meaning the white officer, he had this instrument in his hand that he kind of moved around on this glass table that Harry would also have to be reacting to, and he couldn't see the man reacting to inside the simulator, and it looked somewhat like a crab. There's some diction in here that might be a little unfamiliar, but I think you can kind of follow along. Artificial Horizon, Harry Stewart in the Link Trainer Fight Simulator. Sweat, dank thought dotting Harry's skull, overheated by Alabama's thermometer. Unair-conditioned simulator, the building, but mostly by the ground tutelage for instrument flight. The link trainer, a telephone booth of taking off, not even an inch, from the earth. Within spitting distance, an instructor controlled a control panel, controlled a gob of sky, and through headphones transmitted questions, requested turns, charted Harry's answers, the way his hands barreled or flinched, their gloved clutched rebuttals, to pitch and roll, to yaw, to flying blind, charted Harry's answers to dive and climb, stick and rudder, to night flying, jotted down his responses to slipstreams, pre-stall buffets, the distinct mood of his bright blue fuselage, noted the answers of Harry's hands to a flight plan by radio beacon, noted his palms' responses to memories of fog. All this, a fictive Nickelodeon, an instrument panel cheap seat, a wooden box approximate with instruments Harry relied on to navigate, to maneuver, to fly the link, to fly the lie. Within that spitting distance, the white instructor sat before an echo of Harry's instruments, a lead-penciled, angled as if for takeoff, sandwiched between his left ear and skull. Harry's fake and not so far fate in his hands. The instructor inches a crab across a map table's glass surface, dictates a flight plan. In his hand, a carapace, a cancer, a tumor which traces Harry's clockwise course for that day's part of the course. In his hand, a crab, a deep sky beehive he plunged 590 light years into the zenith to seize. In his hand, a northern sky naked eye object. In his hand, pincers, a cloud of pollen, cooled and withered. In his hand, a crustacean, a bite-sized constellation, which, above a tree line, would resemble a bolt of lightning about to bolt. In his hands, shards of an atmosphere Harry's real craft would never reach. In his hand, a morsel of a tapered zodiac. So if his instructor could mince and clutch the welkin, why wouldn't he complicate Harry's tight sky? Spin the Corona cadet in that mock pit, spawn a blizzard, a dollop of weather to further unsettle Harry in that blue box, that fake flying shanty, that pre-packaged taradiddle being told to and about the sky and this now pinched, invented air. And the welkin is another word for the sky, or is a word for the sky. So there was a plane that he flew. They actually went to some other places. They were up in Michigan for a while training. They were also in Texas. And there was a plane, the North American Aviation AT-6, that for whatever reason, the airmen called it an honest airplane. So this is kind of riffing on that, nickname they gave for the airplane. An honest airplane, Harry Stewart training with the North American Aviation AT-6. This was look right, fly right honesty, manipulated honesty, unwanted instrument honesty. This was wanton honesty. This was churning idiosyncratic honesty, ornery honesty, standing at attention, smack dab honesty, the kind that could make you or made you or break you and braid you. This here was quicksilver, unwavering honesty, cockpit honest, alluring, wing-witty fuselage truth, personality type A for air type of honesty, the heavenly threshold of honesty, honesty with dentures. This was unmonitored goggle honesty. This was more honesty than honesty could handle. This was honest to goodness and honest to badness. Some cool down papa honesty, Lone Star, North Star honesty, straighten up and fly right honesty. This was cylinder after cylinder of honesty, 9 to be exact. This was horse-powered honesty, advanced and intermediate honesty, peculiar air-cooled honesty. This was controlled honesty on the Ides of March. This was open wide and say, honesty, honestly. All right. So we'll switch it up a little bit. As I mentioned, I've gotten 3 grants from the Queen's Council on the Arts and forever grateful. This is a book that came out back in March. It's called Bone Yarn. It's the first book of poems about slavery in New York City. New York has the oldest and largest slave cemetery in the United States. So I'll read this piece called Mercy. You were talking about the Dutch being here. They were the first colonial settlers here, and then the English subsequently. There was a slave revolt in 1712 where 24 enslaved Africans, some Native Americans also attempted to, they lit an outhouse on fire, and the hope was that it would lead to a fire burning down the whole city because it was mostly wood structures. Didn't quite work out that way. Most of the enslaved, all were killed, hung, burned at the stake, broken at the wheel. And so this is a piece about an enslaved gentleman named Klaus, who was broken at the wheel. And there was such hysteria among the white colonial settlers that they actually killed enslaved people who had not participated in the revolt. And Klaus was one of them. Kip was a street in Lower Manhattan. Let's see if there's anything else I should say in terms of background. Let's just go, and I'll hopefully if there's anything on the back end, we'll revisit. So there's an epigraph from Thomas Jefferson's Notes on Virginia. Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just. Thomas Jefferson, and the piece is called Mercy. Along the city's jawline, by a wharf where a peck of slaves were auctioned, Klaus might have heard tell how Robin sunk a penny knife into the conch below his owner's shoulder. Now barefoot he is stripped to the waist, spread eagle, bound to a wagon wheel, spokes versed in grass and its green obedience, mud's scorched metamorphosis, the way snow delivers news piecemeal from the heavens. Limbs stretched and slowly rotated on that wheel, Klaus absorbs the dust, the turns, the deliveries, each journey's leg and arm. Executioners seldom traffic in compassion. This one punishes Klaus bottom up. First, the sledgehammer rains on his shins. Jesus, have mercy, he screams and rotates until they snap between gaps of the wheel. A wooden cudgel sinks to his kneecaps. He howls and rotates till they shatter. Even the chalky, taunting throng winces. Then the thunder of an iron bar is administered to his forearms. He shrieks and rotates till they're smashed. The elbows, the chest, the endless bone cracking caught a quarter of a mile off until, against God's own architecture, each limb dips like a fractured hammock. On the commons between Broadway and Kip, the wheel is nailed high on a pole. Sparrowhawks peck at the broken body. For 4 days, for likely only having offered Robin a penny knife or shelter in the wee hours of an April morning, he is bloody, billowing laundry. Only death has the stomach to dry. Mercy. And I do have copies of this book. If any of you might be interested, you could email me to get a signed copy at simplysyllables@yahoo.com. That's simplysyllables @yahoo.com. They can also be found on Amazon, but they won't be signed. So I'm going to switch gears. These are also poems that were funded by a grant from the council. They are about Louis Armstrong, who spent the last 25 years of his life living in Corona, Queens. Louis had, as one of our audience members, Jason, knew of, had a lifelong fixation with laxatives. And later in his life, his wife, Lucille, or his final wife, she came across a laxative called Swiss Chris, and Louis started taking it, and he was gone. And you're only supposed to take it, if you're in that place, if you know what I mean, once every few days. He took it every day for like the last 25 years of his life. And he was like a shill. He was like a pitch man for this, this laxative, and he wasn't getting paid. So this is called Swiss Chris, opening number. My laxative Jones started young, 3 bottles of Pluto water a day. Years later, laid some of that French lick high mineral stuff on my band. Marty Napoleon sipped and was grateful he had the day off. Then my dear Lucille hit me to Swiss Chris, a laxative from Zurich. It called to mind the leaves my physic-minded mother would pick down by the tracks. Gaylord Hauser, self-proclaimed food scientist, a minus as far as medical credentials go, invented this concoction of dandelion, strawberry, and peach. I bought and took a tablespoonful. My butt sounded like a sitting ovation. I had to crawl back to bed, but I was hooked. Double doses nightly. Come morning, bomber on my lips, I'm on my throne, getting high, while my behind's leaving it all behind. I became a lifelong disciple, a walking endorsement for this butt wonder drug. My old pal Joey Bushkin played a one-night stand with my one-nighter band, gave him a packet. He might have thought it was marijuana because Senna calls to mind sun-dried tea leaves. He smoked it. Struck me as a kind of herbal adultery. Either way, his butt improvised on the toilet for 2 days straight. It all nearly ended right there at his rear end, everything coming to a head from his tail. Let's see. Here I am talking bad about people, and I can't find my own phone. All right, I'll just where is it? Oh, okay, there it is. Where is this from? So one of Lewis's classic songs from later in his career is called "What a Wonderful World," and he didn't want to record it. Thought it was a kind of corny tune, and he was living in Corona, and the neighborhood was changing. It was shifting from more of an African-American neighborhood to what we would say Latinx neighborhood, although back then it would have been Latino. And so he looked out and saw the kids playing with their families, and he said, all right, I'll record this thing. So this is riffing on one of his late hits, What a Wonderful World, for Louis Armstrong. The melody sounded like Twinkle Twinkle's great uncle Oompa Loompa. I see trees of green. Label wasn't seeing the same green because they only offered me 5 C notes, which was just a bunch of skimpy blue notes record execs tossed my way. See, Daddy-O, this was the late 60s, and so was I, chronologically speaking. See, I'd recently been subjected to a drop-dead trumpet discussion, quacks saying I had to cut it out. Cut what out? My playing? Might as well sever my tongue, because that's what my horn had come to be. I sat mute, imagining them, imagining my throat as a backed up toilet. Maybe a soup spoon fell in it. Then them driving a mute to its proper use, driving a plunger into my windpipe, thinking they're unclogging some stopped up crap, not realizing my throat was just congested with musical nuances. See, they didn't just want my sound altered or softened, they wanted it gone. My horn shit and sweet talk, its chatter, shout, and ramble, my hello, Dolly, felt more like goodbye, daddy, after that. But that's when that, what or whatever, that sheet music started crackling in my palms. Got me thinking about Corona, my neighborhood. I see friends shaking hands. I took union scales so strings could be attached and sessions squeezed in to get the fruit juice out of the music, the tang and the rhyme. No horn, no scat, just me crooning. And for once, I stuck to the melody like Off-White sticks to rice, and maybe a few beans too. My voice a bullfrog, mid-leap, a rusted gut bucket ribbit. Beneath it, them strings, mosquitoes gliding just beyond my croak. Mosquitoes thinking my tongue was sizing them up for supper, but it just wanted to unleash a song. Think about it. Between takes, my lips wasn't wondering if them strings, beans or otherwise, would be part of some banquet. No, my tongue just wanted to backflip and cross-examine my throat. What's so wonderful? These lyrics are like Pop's Benedict Arnold's. All them one-nighters, he had pneumonia a few months back. Still, my voice, a castle of passion, recording those 12 inches of optimism in that studio, that uterus, nurturing that embryo, giving birth to that ballad. But instead of from between my legs, with them very closed veins, it came from between my lips. Instead of pounds and ounces, we weighed it in minutes and seconds, 209 to be exact. We snipped the umbilical cord on the Tonight Show. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. Some call my newborn mushy claptrap schmaltz and muggly, meaning musically ugly. But I brought my baby on stages and backstages, cuddled my bundle of joy, breastfed it till it climbed to the top of the British charts. English mothers and fathers made babies listening to my baby. 600,000 copies. My baby became my May I Kiss the Bride ballad, my And I'll Pronounce You Man and Music. After that, my lips stopped scolding my throat as I sang Bright Blessed Days. Honestly, every night before I'd hit the stage, I would crouch in the wings, inhale an entire audience through the bell of my horn, their every breath, then spend the next hour and change blowing it back to them as syncopated air. Now I sing just as well. What a wonderful world, because it truly was. Oh, yeah. So maybe do one or two more. I want to thank you for being here. For those who are watching or will watch, I certainly hope you enjoy. This piece is called Jazz Math. Louis came to fame with some albums called the Hot Fives and Hot Sevens. And so I was just riffing on this idea of, the numbers 5 and 7. So it's called Jazz Math. And his first wife was named Lil Hardin. She was a great pianist, and she actually played with Louis early on in his career. Jazz Math. 4 plus 1 equals hot 5. 2 plus 5 equals hot 7. 3 plus 2 equals hot 5. 4 plus 3 equals hot 7. 1 plus 1 equals cool 2. O plus K equals hot 5. Po plus boy equal yummy tummy. Notes on wax equal hot 7. Lil plus Hardin equal married to. Lil plus Hardin equal divorced from. Big plus easy equals down home. Seller plus break equal warm 4. Critics plus time equal not 5. 11 plus 12 equal groundbreaking. Shy plus town equals sound breaking. Turn plus over equal tuned up. 10 less 3 equals hot 7. Swing plus swang equals hot 5. Willie plus weeper equal Lil Hardin. Hebe plus GB equal Lil Hardin. 6 plus 1 equal hot 7. 6 less 1 equal hot 5. Wild plus man comes up jazz knees. New plus Orland equal West End. Stew plus Dio equal scat chat. Blair plus from equal record stores. Lil plus Harden equal ivories. Funny plus bits equal hot 7. Short plus shrift equal hot 5. Soul plus low equal hot jive. Zoo plus Lou equal jazz mansion. Trum less et equal cornet. Chop plus Suey equal hot 5. Core plus uts equal muskrat. 7 less 5 equal not 2. Strutting with some equal barbecue. Epi plus stet equal not 7. Faster and slow equal tempo. Weary plus blue maybe Langston. Tight plus light equal this. Potato plus head equal hot 7. Allard plus gator equal big butter. Egg plus man equal cholesterol. Hot plus 5 equal cool down. Hot plus 7 equal back then. Sugar plus foot equal diabetes. Rhythm plus section equals squeeze me. Cups plus numbers equals jazz math. Mahogany plus stump equal hot 5. Rubber plus Tory got a Rambo. Error plus gone equal cooled off. 5 less hot equal not 2. 10 over 2 equal hot 5. Eggs over easy equals music mouth. Music minus Louis equals stone cold. Pyre plus near equals hell's 12. 7 plus 5 equals swell 12. Soul plus out equal packed house. Sell plus out equal turncoats. Arrange plus meant equal hot diggity. Lewis plus horn equals hot damn. So I will close with a piece named Levito. This is the beginnings of Lewis's career. In 1912, he was born in New Orleans, and he actually had gotten in trouble with the law and was sent to what was called the Colored Boys Waifs Home. And it was there that he was given his first instrument, and as they say, the rest was history. Levito, Louis Armstrong at the Colored Waifs Home, New Orleans, 1912. Thinking to celebrate and retaliate with a 38, it was the dirty lowdown reaching for the upper register. But Officer Long John Gorman took me in on New Year's, a blue year, the way it all began. Manuela and Joseph running the Colored Waifs Home, my home now. The button-up straightened out, wooden guns and wooden drums, white bean, honeysuckle, sweet, sweet, shoes for the feet, bed for my sleep. It was underfunded, overcrowded, juvenile delinquent music, love at first sound, but 6 months before that initial peckhorn kiss. It was struggling to read a book, let alone keys. So it was the education of my ear. It wasn't jazz, but a whittle down, Swanee River and hymns, white pants and gabardine coats, easy walkers and peppermint. It was Mr. Davis running things with a reputation preceding me, but he finally gave in to a beginner's baptism in rhythm, because it was the inexperience of the experienced, soap stammering in my eyes, top teeth against the mouthpiece, the all right of playing it wrong, a licking for bad licks. Still, it was a calling born in that orphanage. It was a belly of genius digesting itself in a city of the self-taught. It was growl and mute, Chitlin's kitchen bent and dazzled. It was beautiful melody, basic training. It was ragtime, swanky addendum. Called it drag time till I got that dented brass to gleaming. It was the marquee cornet, no matter the lips stapled to it, Bolden or Bunk. It was first influences, marching bands, not the jazz man, but a waif's abused University of Music. See, that's where I got my finger degree. Lips graduating magna cum loudly. Storyville losing its grip as I started taking directions from the passport blowing between my lips. 2. It was jokeified itty-bitty garden carpentry, black molasses bread hunks, stevedore honky-tonks, the King's English when a Negro boy is poor and foolish, but still gets his go-home. It was seeing beyond those chocolate possibilities, liberty, perdido, old haunts, whores and pimps, beggars and thieves, apocryphal prostitutes applauding Dippermouth, spaghetti and beer sporting crowd, the Marianne gamblers passing the hat, then that hat, then that hat. It was somebody for the first time in my life when I was resigned to nobody for the breath of my life. It was the brass balls of our brass band as I came into my own on my horn. One of Louis Armstrong's nicknames was Dippermouth. Some people felt he had an outsized mouth, and that's the his nickname Satchmo is actually a shortened version of Satchel Mouth, which was also talking about the size of his mouth, or the perceived size of his mouth. I don't know if I want to say thank you for being here, and I don't know if you, as audience, have any questions or comments as we're winding down. Thank you.
I like the part. We're gonna rewind back a little bit when we did the Greek alphabet.
Sure.
I'm of Greek heritage.
Oh, okay.
My last name is Antos, but it's actually Antonopoulos.
Tikanis.
If I stop. It's Tikanis.
Kalasi.
Because you mentioned the Greek alphabet and how it resonates in the South. I believe that was the gist of the.
Oh, just. Right. And how they were reacting negatively, if
exactly.
you will. Right.
Because my great grandfather came from Greece to this country, and he could have ended up in Chicago or New York, which would have been the typical, and he ended up in Birmingham, Alabama.
Huh.
And that is where he is buried to this very, he's
buried
there, of course.
Well, the Tuskegee Airmen were in Tuskegee, Alabama, so that's kind of neat.
And I don't think anyone in the past 60 years has visited his grave because there's no one else there. He was everyone else ended up here in New York and Queens, and he ended up there, and he owned a gas station. And this is going back into the 1920s.
Sure.
With a Jewish gentleman by the name of Herschel Diamond. So, and his name was Spiros Antonopoulos,
Your great-grandfather.
My great-grandfather. So I found, I was doing research, it's just very quick.
That's okay.
And I found a police report in which their car had been stolen, and they had to go, and the car was then found, but they had to go to court to
get it back. Right.
So I just imagine, 1922, 23, this ethnic Jewish man, this ethnic Greek immigrant, and before a judge in Birmingham, Alabama,
right,
to try to get the freaking car.
And how, do you have a sense of what your great grandfather's capacity with English was at that point?
I am sure it wasn't that good, as it is with most of my family. The only one who had an ear for English was my father.
Okay.
And everyone else in the family.
And you.
Here, and myself. Thank you. But everyone else who came here, even though they've been here for 50, 60 years, they can barely speak it. It's terrible. But so I'm imagining that he kind of maybe wound up in the same boat.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It was actually, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it was about this Western classically trained African-American pianist, and he had a driver. He's living up here in New York, and he had a driver, and he had a tour, and the Italian-American driver, and from the Bronx, and they're driving into the South, and his Italian-American accent or New York Bronx accent was very thick, and some of the white Southern gentlemen were like, I don't think you're white. So I'm just sort of connecting with that, with your great grandfather, maybe some of the perceptions he might have run up against
sure.
in that part of the United States.
Too bad he wasn't a man of letters, because if he kept the diary, I'm sure it would have been very interesting.
Oh, sure.
But he did not. So unfortunately, that we could only speculate. But I think some of it is a good hypothesis of what probably happened.
And I'm trying to remember that, because the film was really, really good. I'm trying to remember the name of it. And it was based on a true story.
Yes.
This guy was like incredibly gifted, and he couldn't get gigs like in orchestras, so he went and did like these solo performances like all over the country. But it kind of focused in. Oh, it was called The Green Book. Because
sure.
Did you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. So, there was a book that my folks would use when they were traveling. I mean, anywhere, but more so in the South, because there often weren't places to stay, and you had to be careful about where you were getting your gas and things like that. So, the Italian-American guy, and then the African-American pianist, they had the Green Book, and that was kind of how they charted how they were moving about in the South. Really good film. So I don't know if the docent, if you have any question or
I
comment.
just thought it's interesting about Louis Armstrong, because, you know, I love that song.
What a Wonderful World.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
When I hear it, it always makes me smile.
Yeah, I think it makes most people smile. And so just kind of getting the backstory
Right,
on that.
exactly. It's interesting to
Yeah,
hear that.
and that he really had no interest in recording it, you know, at first. And then even the record label was like, yeah, whatever, you know, and it became one of his like greatest hits in the latter part of his career. So yeah.
You're right. It is kind of unusual song for him to sing. It's not the norm.
Yeah.
He said, yeah. So that's.
I mean, he did sing "Hello, Dolly," which is also poppy.
But this one more, you know, sentimental, I guess, and you know, so like you said, he was crooning, you know, and not scatty, and you know, it's very.
And I think he was also thinking about his own mortality, because there's a comment in there where he went to the doctor and they were like, "You might need to give up playing," and he's like, you know, might as well just cut my tongue out, because my horn, that's what it's become. Like that's what I speak with. So you're telling me I can't talk anymore. And so, it gave it a whole new, like researching the song, it gave a whole new kind of perspective on the gravitas on one level, and then, you know, the joy in it, because he decided to record it based on looking out in his neighborhood one day and seeing the kids playing. And one of the lines of the song, I see, you know, friends shaking hands, saying, "How do you do?" Blah, blah, blah. Okay. So I thank you, and you know, hopefully this won't be the last time we convene here.
Right.
Yeah.
Open my eyes to different things.
It's always a good thing.
Yes, it was wonderful.
Yeah.
David, thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.